To France now, where police in Paris have used tear gas and water cannon against protesters, demanding that President Macron drop an increase on the tax on diesel. Across the country, 130 people have been arrested. Diesel's the most commonly used fuel in French cars, and the cost has risen significantly over the past 12 months. It's all part of the President's drive against pollution. Well, a large crowd of demonstrators, known as the Yellow Vests, converged on the Champs-Élysées. For more than a week now, protesters wearing those fluorescent yellow jackets have blocked highways across the country. Our correspondent Lucy Williamson reports from Paris.
This a reminder for France's president. Sparks can quickly ignite into flames. The Champs-Élysées, not a tourist site today, but an unofficial battleground. Protesters armed with paving stones, pushed back by tear gas, water cannon, riot police. This movement is about more than fuel prices. Its supporters tired of taxes, tired of politicians. Their slogans threatening revolution. The French authorities, a joke to some.
We have to pay for rent, food, insurances and telephone. What's left at the end of the month? Nothing. I don't want Macron to just cut taxes, I want him to resign.
Why is it always the little taxpayer who has to pay? We've been tightening our belts for 30 years. If it gets any tighter, we're going to explode.
The government banned protesters from this street today, pointing them to the Eiffel Tower instead. The far-right leader Marine Le Pen questioned why. The government says she's encouraging dissent.
We
are using water cannons and tear gas to push back the assailants. The ultra-right is mobilized and has answered Marine Le Pen's call. They want to attack institutions. They want to attack governing MPs.
The government said no protests on this street, and look what happens. They say ultra-right elements are responsible for the violence here, but many ordinary people say they also support this movement. This protest has brought together people from all political backgrounds, all parts of France. But it's a movement with no national leader, no formal structure. Its membership and its identity hard to control. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
I want to take you to Paris now. Stunning pictures coming out of there. Protesters filling the most famous street in France, the iconic Champs-Élysées, with fire and explosions. In a second weekend of protests, the usual scene of tourists and Parisians enjoying cafes and luxury shops replaced by burning vehicles. As 8,000 protesters clashed with 3,000 police in riot gear. The demonstrators, who call themselves the Yellow Vests, are angry over rising fuel prices. Now, police used tear gas and a water cannon in an attempt to break up these demonstrations. CNN's Jim Bitterman is joining us now from Paris. Jim, tell us why these protesters are so angry.
Well, I think it started off as a fuel protest a week ago, Anna, but in fact, over the last few days, it's generalized a lot. People are just dissatisfied with the Macron government. His approval rating has dropped to 25%. They're worried about the rising cost of living, about pension payments that aren't really making ends meet. So it's just a generalized anger about the state of the economy. And of course, President Macron has vowed to continue forward on his ideas of reforming the economy here. So I think people just have had enough, and they heard a lot of people say that today. You heard a lot of people calling for Macron's resignation. Now, here on the Champs-Élysées, this is not the scene you would expect on the Saturday night following Black Friday. You would think there'd be a lot of people out and that sort of thing. People today were protesters throughout the day, and only about an hour ago or so did the police make a move with a major assault on the avenue here with multiple trucks and hundreds of police to clear away the demonstrators. And for the most part, they've succeeded. There are still a few pockets of resistance along here. We haven't heard from Macron all day until very late this evening when he put out this tweet. He said, thanks to all the law enforcement, you'd expect that, but he said, shame on all the people who assaulted them, shame on those who voluntarily assaulted citizens and reporters, shame on those who tried to intimidate our elected officials. So you have him taking a very kind of professorial or perhaps paternalistic tone, something that he's been criticized for in the past. Anna?
All right, Jim Bitterman, thank you so much. Back home now.
New reaction from French President Emmanuel Macron as he condemns the violence in the streets of Paris today. Police clashing with demonstrators protesting over rising fuel taxes. At least 20 people were hurt in the protest and dozens more arrested. Ryan Chilcote is following the story from our London bureau. Ryan?
Hey, Arcel, 2 people have been killed, hundreds injured since these protests began exactly 1 week ago. And today, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets again, not just in Paris, but right across the country. Why are they angry? Well, in France, a gallon of diesel costs about $6.30. Of course, they don't sell it by the gallon and they don't sell it in dollars. They sell it in euros and liters, but I've done the conversion for you. This year, taxes on diesel fuel went up by about 30 cents, the equivalent of a gallon. If the French president gets his way, Emmanuel Macron, then they will go up by another 25 cents on January the 1st. Most people in France, 4 out of 5, say that shouldn't happen. A lot of people that think of this as a tax actually on the poor, a way to get poor people to pay for climate change. The French president says that the whole idea of this tax increase is to discourage people from buying cars that then create problems for the climate. Not everybody thinks that that's fair, though, for people particularly outside of the capital where they tend to drive more and are less affluent. Macron, going into this, was already battling a perception that he is out of touch with working class people. This obviously isn't helping. One thing you'll notice, those protesters are wearing yellow vests. They're keeping those are actually high visual vests that the French are legally required to keep in their cars. They've become something of a symbol for the protests. One saving grace in all of this, and you'll notice it at the pump, that, of course, the price of oil is coming down. The prices at the pump in Paris and France, too, are coming down, but they're still at the highest they've been in a decade.
Ryan Chilcote, thank you. We'll be right back.